we should always laugh. Greetings, greetings, greetings. Dumela, Saubona, Sakpase, Namaste, Upshim Dubra Ota, Assalamu alaikum, Otep.
Hey, Guten.
Welcome. What'd you say, Guten Tag?
Yeah.
Okay, all of them. We can add all of those. Good evening, family. Good evening, Facebook community. This is Doriel Inez Larrier of Larrier's Educational Resource Network, where I plant seeds to help you grow. And this is an impromptu digital couch conversation. This is a moment where we need to hear a power of story. Why? Because our country is under siege. Like right now, right as we speak. Now, if you know that I always have good conversations, this is one of them. This one I really, really beg and please share it out to people who, whether or not they live in DC, they live in Maryland, they live in Virginia, or they just live right here in Brownsville, Bed-Stuy, Bedford Avenue. It doesn't matter. Bedford Park, we are all being affected by what's happening right now. I decided to, I posted about 2 or 3 hours ago that I get a phone call from one of my classmates in South Africa, in Johannesburg, and he calls me and he says, Doriel, what's going on in your country? I was doing some other work. I said, what's going on? And he goes, I called you for the intel. I called you for the intel about your country. I know more than you. So
Mm-hmm.
actually, he goes, you need to, like, your capital is under siege. I said, what are you talking about? He goes, I said, what are you looking at, CNN? He goes, no, the BBC. Go look at that. I turn it on and I see it looks like, let's just say, I won't use another word. There are lots of people around the U.S. Capitol. And of course, the first thing I'm thinking of is, how'd they get on the steps?
Mm-hmm.
How'd they get that close? This is a global shutdown.
Exactly.
How? So I said, oh my goodness, what are we going to do? What's going on? And so I said, let me just reach out to somebody who might shed some impact, some insight to this. And I called brother Josue Pierre, who is here with me on the digital couch today. So welcome, Josue Pierre. There you go. You're sitting over there. And I decided to, hey, why don't we just chat about this for a couple of moments? Let's see what's up. Let's talk about some of the issues that are literally looming, not just locally, nationally, but globally. And
Mm-hmm.
just see, if you have any questions about it, if you have any insight, please drop your comments in the chat. We will see them and we'll be able to respond, or at least just have a space. The terms that are being used today is holding space.
Mm-hmm.
So allow then me to hold space for this moment, because I think all of us are just shut up and shut out way too much.
Mm-hmm.
And somehow, some way, we need to have a moment to at least share our feelings. So first, let me just intro to some and present to others. Brother Josue Pierre. Brother Josue, welcome to the digital couch.
Thank you for having me here on the digital couch. My name is Josue Pierre, but you can call me Josh. And it's been some time that I wanted to be a guest on the digital couch. So it's wonderful to be invited, but not very wonderful day today. But I'll let you get to that part when you're ready.
Sure. And let's also just share your role in our local community, because what I attempt to do is, as I say all the time, is to bring people of note, and I believe many people are of note, who need to share with local folks, and we're all, at the end of the day, local folks, but we all have a word of inspiration, of impact, of influence onto our next door neighbor, the people across the street, across town, across the state. And you are one of them. And I just wanted to shout you out, number one, for being a leader in our community, and number
Thank
two,
you.
to get some insight of how we, regular people, can process this, what we should know about a little bit about how government operates, and how this could actually happen. So that's why I really wanted to have you on the show.
Okay. Those are a number of great questions that have layers of depth to them. So whenever you repeat some of them, I'll get into them. But your first question was, who am I? What's my role in the community? I'm a candidate for city council in the 40th council district. So if you're in Prospect, Lefferts Garden, Flatbush, Ditmas Park, Kensington, parts of Midwood, parts of Crown Heights, etc., then I'm running to represent you. I'm a affordable housing activist. I am a district leader, and I'm a former financial analyst and a director at the New York City Comptroller's Office. I've lived in the area since I was about a 5-year-old kid from Haiti, over on Church Avenue, and then we moved to my parents' house on Snyder. So I know the community, and I'm very familiar with politics because I grew up in a household where they'd watch CNN every day, and I became very acclimated to politics and wanting to follow who are the decision makers, how do they make their decisions, and how do they impact people like my neighbors.
Hmm. Excellent. So I'd like to know, and those people, again, if you're just popping on, please do us a favor and do yourself a favor to engage in a conversation.
Hmm.
And I have to say that I've always wanted to have conversations like this. Thank you so much for the like. Um, and I'm a person, those of you who already know me, you kind of know a little bit about my story. I'm Brooklyn born and bred.
Hmm.
Shout out to Erasmus Hall, where right down the block, where is my high school, E Hall all day. Uh, but I grew up not really understanding a lot about politics. For whatever reason, I was not connected to the political machine of the day as I was growing up. And so, my parents would take me to vote, and I knew it was kind of important, but I really didn't know who was who, what was what, and what their responsibility was. So as I grew older and became involved during college in, some rallies and protests and divestment from South Africa, which was like a big deal when I was in
Hmm.
college, I was like, wait a minute, like there are real things that should be addressed, but I just did not know how to do that. So as I left and I became even more involved in my local community, I was like, well, who are these people and do they really talk to regular people? And so I made it a mission to try to connect with my local politicians to ensure that regular people like me
Hmm.
really want to know what's going on and how to help and to try to move this machine forward. So thank you very, very much once again for sitting and chatting with me. So let's hop into what's happening. Like, what's going on? I feel like I should play like Marvin Gaye. What's going on right
What is going on indeed? So I was just as shocked as you were because I was in the middle of doing some writing when I looked at my phone, and one of my friends slash constituents on the Ditmas Park side, she texted me and she said, look at CNN right now."
now?
Whenever somebody tells you look at CNN right now,
Yeah, you know it's on.
good. So I turned on the TV. I mean, not the TV. Doesn't really. I turned on YouTube, and I was going through the different news channels, live news channels, and then earlier this morning, Congress and the Congress was meeting to do the electoral vote count. I watched the beginning of it where there was a joint session, then there was an objection, and they had to go back to their different chambers and have a debate and a discussion, and they'd have an intermission for 2 hours and come back. So I said, right, do your thing. I'm gonna go back to my writing. Was doing that, and like I said, I picked up the phone, and then I logged on to YouTube, and I was paying attention to what was being said on the TV, and visually, it looked like a coup d'état was happening in the United States of America. And
Right, right.
it is like fun, not like you can talk about third world countries and all that good stuff and etc., but it's not something that you would expect to see unless you were paying close attention to the rhetoric out of the president's mouth and a lot of his supporters over the last 12 months.
Mhm. So so one of the first things that popped into my head was, and I actually posted about this on Facebook a little while ago, is the, the simple fact that how did they get to the building? How did they get to the building? Let alone how did they get on the lawn? Now, from my understanding, I am aware that there was I guess like a rally set up, or maybe a protest set up, or something like, or a gathering. Let's call it a gathering, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Down the block at the park,
Yes.
right? That's what I'm aware of. That's
So,
right.
what
You
I've,
tell me
what
about
I've, so there are two questions there. So at first, Trump and his folks had called these people out and literally, basically invited them to come to Washington. If you're paying attention to the dog whistle, and it's not very subtle, right? If you're paying attention to the dog whistle for the past couple of weeks and even months, he's been saying, well, if I lose or if they try to steal it, then people should come out, and I don't think people are going to be happy. And he was suggesting these things to them passively.
Mm-hmm.
Then he has his rally with them, and from what I heard, then he leaves the rally, and these people are still hyped up, and they're there, and they march towards the Capitol. Now, if you've ever been to a protest in DC, the last time I went to a major protest in DC was for the Women's March, right?
Mm-hmm.
They have a lot of security down there, right? Especially, right? So,
Right. But
yeah,
wait, pump the brakes. Let's stop right there. That's what I'm talking about.
exactly.
I know whenever I have gone to DC, I can't even get a stone's throw, not even a stone,
You try.
a pebble, a cannon,
Mhm.
a cannon.
You're trying to get on the steps to take a few pictures and let the people back home know you were here, and it's not no go.
No, you have to stand like 6 miles away, not even
Exactly.
6 feet. Okay.
Yeah. Especially post 9/11, especially under this presidency. Yeah.
Right.
So
So you know what I'm thinking, right?
yeah.
CON.
What's that?
Oh, I'm sorry. You have to kind of be old school Brooklyn. CON
Mm-hmm.
conspiracy.
Mm-hmm. Oh yes. Is it me or is it a conspiracy? Right. So I wouldn't go that far, but I would say this. You can, if you look at the images from when we were having the Black Lives Matter protests from the women's, from whenever a progressive group goes there, there's this whole military cordoning off of the Capitol, the White House, etc., which is quite interesting because those groups generally do not show up with guns because we're the anti-gun side. Now, these folks have been announcing for months now that they will show up with their guns. They will be violent. They will not passively protest, and they would engage in what are essentially acts of terrorism. And yet we weren't ready for that. We didn't know that they were coming. Um, this speaks to the racial aspect of who has the right to what and who can behave how choose to behave and who has to behave as if they are far 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 below the law while these guys are behaving as if they're above the law. You saw it when what was that, the guy who walked into the church and killed the people while they were having the church service, the black folk.
Mm-hmm.
Then the way he was treated, like these people are not treated like what they are, and they are absolutely terrorists. What is a terrorist? They want to use means of violence to achieve their political aim, and they're literally telling us that's what they want to do. They literally committed an act of terrorism today, but they're given these passes. They're not even using the word terrorism with regards to these people. So in any case, they were so lax about it because these are generally white men that they were able to, with their guns, open carry, walk up into onto the steps, and then there were so many of them that they were able to overwhelm the security system and get inside of our United States Capitol building.
Right. So let's pause right there because that's
Mhm.
another comment. That's another question, and I am only asking questions that really are on the minds of many people. But usually, folks say, "There's nothing you can do about it," or "Why even discuss it?" And so I've had conversations with a number of people over the past couple of years saying, "I really want to discuss conversations like this because maybe it's me. I don't know. Maybe it's just that I don't understand. Maybe I just haven't been given all the information." But I need some help processing this. How is it? Again, the last time I visited DC, it was summertime. It wasn't even a big, like, rally esque time. And I walked and I saw on the top of every building somebody with a rifle.
Exactly.
Somebody on every corner of the building.
Well,
How is it that they got to the building without firing off anything? I don't understand.
Doriel, you don't even have to go that far. Think about, I marched in a number of Black Lives Matter
Mm-hmm.
rallies, Trans Lives Matter, progressive rallies of every type over the summer.
Right.
tell you there was definitely heavy security presence.
Precisely.
And whenever, in particular, people of color, but specifically Black people,
Hmm.
decide that they're fed up by the injustices that are done to them, real injustices, like we're being killed,
Right. That's
and we're like, maybe you've killed one or two too many of us, and it's on camera this time, and
yeah.
we get out and we rally and we express our frustration peacefully, because all of the protests that I've been to are peaceful. Were peaceful. There was still a very heavy police presence. They were making it very clear that don't start none and there wouldn't be none. Or
No
if
one
you
be nice.
are still around beyond a certain point or a certain time, we will violently engage you. And you saw that happen over and over again. But these guys just roll up with their rifles and they're given the red carpet treatment. And apparently you can't touch them, you can't check them because they are above the law.
Right. And so I am concerned, as a number of people are, about. So, well, let me just say this: that Maya Angelou, I think it was Maya Angelou, may be cited for this. That she'll say, or she has said, like, believe someone when they tell you who they are.
The first time.
First time.
Hmm.
First time. If I'm telling you, I'm not gonna like this, and I'm coming for you, and the law enforcement does not get back up, because we are aware that there was a little notification less than 24 hours ago that there was going to be additional engagement, let's call it, through the air. There was no backup.
Well, you made an interesting statement when you started. You were talking about Maya Angelou and believing the person when they show you who they are the first time. The first time that they showed us who they were and what they were willing to do was a few years back when they had that rally. I want to say Charlottesville. I can't remember
Mm-hmm.
specifically where it was, and they rammed a car through the protesters that were there, the peaceful protesters that were there. They started shooting people up and they got violent. And then there were the tiki torches. They were letting us know exactly who they were at that time. And there was no reason not to believe them. And that was also the time that this current
Leader.
president, who is the outgoing president, no matter what he thinks he's going to pull,
Mm-hmm.
was saying that, well, they're good people on both sides. How many times have you seen a million man march burst through the doors of Congress, or a Black Lives Matter march, or a women's march make it that far and
Right.
get that violent? And that's not as many people as we've had at these various marches. We had way more people and did what we had to do, said our piece, and we went home. These guys are making it very clear, years ago and up until this very day, that they were more than happy and more than willing to get violent, and they're hoping to get violent. Just a few months ago, they stormed a state capitol. If they
Right.
storm a state capitol, you know what's next. It's not that complicated.
Guess what? It's today.
Today's the day. You know, it's a really scary thing, and I think for a lot of American people it's still surreal because, oh, that type of thing doesn't happen here. What are we, Venezuela, or someplace in Latin America?
Right.
Well, this is what we've allowed to fester and grow. And when I say fester and grow, it's not the social issues that they're complaining about. It's really the demographic changes and the racial makeup of our country, and the fact that this man for the last 4 years has been allowed to use his bigoted dog whistle to egg them on and let them know, yo, do what you got to do. Nobody's going to check you. And they've literally today come out and done what they felt like they had to do, and that no one would check them. And guess what? No one checked them.
So that's the scary thing that of course impacts us all. And so moving towards, what is it? It's 6:27 now, and so apparently there was a curfew, or there is a curfew at 6 p.m. So prior to this call, I was chatting with someone, and as you know, we texted each other, and so you gave me like this look, like, and so I was chatting with a Republican. As I said, I'm connected to lots of people, so yeah, and
Yeah.
I was like, what's going on with your president? And the person was like, it's your president too.
Yes.
I said, well, what happened? What's going on? He said, the person said, well, they're not happy. Well, okay, so they're not happy, but they're like barraging, like they're getting into the Capitol. I said, listen, it doesn't matter what the decision is, but to presume a level of, let's just say, posture where you feel that you can permeate a wall, and no pun intended, but a wall that was built to keep everyone safe. What are you going to do when you get in there? Like, I'm sorry, just on the simplest level, what are you going to do when you get in there?
Well, let's
What
start
you going
with
to
the "They're Not Happy." What does that mean? In 2016, after the Hillary Trump election,
do?
when things didn't go our way, were we happy? Were you happy the next day? Were we not depressed? Were we not bummed? Did that entitle us to go out there and march on the Capitol? Did Joe Biden himself not preside as vice president over the counting of the electoral votes? And let's go back even further. When Al Gore lost to George W. Bush in an election that we're still not quite sure went the way it should have, right?
Oh,
Did
mhm.
Al Gore not, as vice president, not preside over the election? Did he not
Right.
put the democracy of our society, law and order, above all?
First.
So, who is this man who is constantly talking about law and order? And we need to discuss what law and order means to them versus what it means in reality.
Right.
Who are they to think that because they are not happy that things didn't go their way, they can have the most massive temper tantrum I have ever seen adults have?
Right.
They like Imagine if we, as people of color, reacted that way with that level of violence, with that many guns, whenever we were not happy about something. And
What
just if
happened?
you're not sure, we're not happy about a lot of things a lot of the time.
Right. So so if we could just pause at the moment of, my mother would say, don't even think it.
Hmm. Yeah,
Don't even think it. Like, let me stop you at the moment that you think you're going to think it. Right.
exactly. Hmm.
So again, I'm concerned that as we're moving together as a community, how we're going to be able to translate who has the right to do what, who has the ability to say what, who has the ability to say, I know it says that 99% of the people, let's just talk Skittles, Skittles, because I'm talking about the Matrix,
Hmm.
the red pill and the blue pill. I'm
Yeah,
trying not to stay away from the red and the blue, but who's going to choose the red, who's going to choose the blue, who gets to decide that even though 99% says in this situation I can't get away from it, the blue pill, that we're going to use that 1% and say, oh no, it's really red. Who gets to do that? Like, how are we as parents, how are we as community leaders, and like yourself, a community activist, a community leader, a politician, how are we supposed to educate and inform and influence our young people to continue to strive towards a democratic society, even though we for a time we were led, by Republicans, but that yes, you have a say, you can have some impact, because at the end of the day, like today, the ball is no longer in your court.
exactly. So there's a couple of things. One, I don't believe in teaching our young people or even our adults, because everybody is constantly learning. Life is one big learning opportunity. I don't believe in telling people fairy tales about our society and how things work. I think you have to be very honest with people. I think there are still people in this country right now that don't understand that this was an attempted coup in the United States
Mm-hmm.
of America. You have to let them know what that is. And
Right.
just like in reality, you have that conversation with your son and sometimes your daughter about when you, as a black person, are stopped by the cop, how you have to behave in order to save your life. We have to have these real conversations. We have to let community members know, internally and externally, what it means to be people of color in this society,
Yes.
what it means to be working class in this society, what it means to be on the margins for any other demographic reason
Right.
and not being a white male in this society. We have to be honest about those things. And in doing so, we also have to be honest about what is our power? What is our ability to actually change things? There is a system. Is it slanted against us? Absolutely.
Right.
Is there voter suppression? Absolutely. But that is one of the most powerful things that we have, being able to get people out to vote and make a difference. Look at the results of this presidential election.
Right.
It was too close for comfort. We
I agree.
prepared, but it was too close for comfort. And people have to keep that in the back of their mind, because I think there's a fantasy in people's heads that good always prevails. If good always prevailed, we wouldn't have had, what was it, 200 to 400 years of slavery, right? Stuff doesn't just fix itself. Coronavirus doesn't just magically go away. Racism doesn't magically go away. This type of terroristic behavior is not going to magically go away. America is going to have to make some tough decisions, but we have to be part of that decision-making process. We have to, as communities that are concerned, reach out to our elected officials, educate ourselves on the process, and engage them and push and get them to and leverage them and do all the things that we have to do. Look how much we in New York invested in getting that election in Georgia to go in the best direction for the United States. Like, this is a victory day for us, where they're trying to take our shine. But we got Warnock in and we got Ossoff in, and we now have the power with that majority. It's a slight majority to get a lot of things done correctly and pass a lot of laws, especially after what happened today.
All right. So those people who are just popping on, and thank you so much to those people who are sharing. I see it all throughout Facebook. I'm sitting with District Leader Josue Pierre, Josh.
Yes.
So
Either.
who is? Thank you. And can I also stop for a moment and say belated happy Earth arrival?
Thank you.
Okay.
I appreciate it.
So and
This
and
this
I
is
do
the
also.
last time 21 for the decade.
You can have it. You can have it.
Yes.
But once you accept your real age, it'll be
Yes.
all. I just have to. So again, this is District Leader Josue Pierre, and we are of the 42nd Assembly District, yes, of
Hmm.
which I live in, proud of it, Flatbush born and bred.
Yes.
Love it. And so we were actually just talking about what has occurred today, or what is occurring right now in
Hmm.
DC. People who, whether you have watched it on, again, CNN or BBC or whatever, fuck, I don't know.
Yes.
So
And
YouTube, the Gram, Facebook, Twitter.
yeah, and we have a lot of our
We all
friends on Facebook watching now. I see Richard Honeywell. I see Sharon Deans commenting. I see Carolyn Jacques. Caroline, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it correctly. So I am trying to track along with you to see
Carlin,
what,
right?
yeah,
Yeah.
what people's concerns are. Yeah.
I appreciate it. Yes, yes. Actually, every time I lower my eyes, I'm like, okay, somebody's commenting. So again, we just wanted to have a moment to, again, to hold some space to try to
Hmm.
process it on a local level, what is happening on a national level, and not just a national
Yeah.
level, but yes, a global level. Again, I got the call from my brother in Johannesburg, South Africa, saying, Doria, what's going on in your country? I'm like, why are you asking me? He's like, don't you see? So at the beginning of this
Hmm.
administration, when the world turned its eyes to us and said, huh? And we were looking like, now at the end of the administration, we're kind of doing like this. And everyone's looking like, huh? It's a sad day. It's a happy day that, yes, we flipped the script. But on the other hand, it's a sad day that our leader, the man in charge, is having a tantrum and is causing the people who are following him to have a tantrum as well. And like I said before about taking the ball and trying to lead the court, you're trying to take the basketball hoop.
Yeah, so there's a couple of things. There's so many things to unpack there. First of all, with regards to how the world sees us, our standing in the world, for those who are not paying into global politics, has diminished significantly. He, in coming in, has undone a lot of the relationships. Diplomacy is a big part of what we do. It's not just about having the biggest army or the biggest military budget. Like, the way you interact with other leaders in the world matters. Your word matters in international politics. So when we sign treaties that existed prior to him coming in and he just disregards them or say, oh, nope, not happening anymore, that undermined us. When he alienated real allies of ours in favor of currying favor with Vladimir Putin, who is the type of despot that he aspires to, that undermined us. When he basically undermined our treaty with NATO, that undermined us. When he came in and undid a lot of what Obama was doing in the Pacific Ocean to basically keep China in check, that undermined us. Why did he do these things? Because one, he doesn't know what he's doing. I don't think people understand that. I don't know how he got that degree from Wharton. Wharton, you have a lot of explaining to do. How you gave this man an MBA and he can go around saying he understands finance, and he clearly does not. I should have gotten that seat at that MBA program, but that's neither here nor there.
There's still time.
And I don't know if my camera went off, but
We're back. We're back. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. But can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, the things that he's done have undermined us, right? We are facing a managed decline in the United States. Our economy is not the best. He could have focused on that, but he focused on nothing but nonsense. And we wasted 4 years of trying to fix our economy, fix collapsing bridges, fix our schools, provide affordable housing. We could have focused on that, but instead, he has focused on his temper tantrums, enriching his family, going down to Mar-a-Lago, and all those other things. So our standing in the world has gone down significantly. And again, this election was very close. Imagine what they would be doing now if they had won.
Let's not imagine that. Let's not imagine
Yeah.
that. Let's not imagine that. I do want to address one uh, point that we haven't talked about yet, and that
Mhm.
actually has to do with funding and the conversation about funding the police or defunding the police. I know last summer there's been a thank you very much for the thumbs up. There's been a very big conversation, and let me be clear with everyone who's watching or who may watch this on the replay. And if you are watching this on the replay, please hashtag replay. Um, Definitely participate in your local politics or your local community activism as best as possible. This is what this conversation is about. I may not necessarily be able to sit in Congress or sit in the Senate. I may not be able to, pass legislation or what have you, but I can participate and engage in conversations with my local leaders to be informed, to inform and influence, and to inspire. And that's what I'm aiming to do with this platform with the power of story. And this particular segment on my digital couch with one of my local leaders. So the conversation about funding law enforcement. The conversation I had right prior to this message was about amidst its variety of having. Are you still there?
Yes, I'm still here.
Is everybody
My
still there?
my camera's acting up. I'm still here, but I hear this.
Okay, not a problem. Then okay, good. So the conversation about how much money do we give to law enforcement, and some people are like, oh, defund them. And once again, I do not know all of the intricacies of funding law enforcement. I do not know. I'm just putting a conversation on the table. If anybody in Facebook land wants to comment or drop a question and drop a suggestion or what have you, please, this is the space to do so because we have an official here or a person who's participating in our political process, who can bring some light, a window that we could sort of peer into pertaining to that. As I looked at what is going on right now, DC's police did not have the body count
Hmm.
to address the hordes of people who stormed the doors. The leader had to call on Fairfax County, Virginia, their next door neighbors, to bring them over. If I'm just asking, I do not know. If we
Hmm.
defund, if we take any additional monies away, how would we be able to handle a situation like this? What if Fairfax County, what if they didn't have the manpower to come on over? What if, let's say the people from Maryland, people from whoever the other neighboring, counties, what if they didn't have the manpower or the people power? Because of course there are women. That's a whole other conversation. But
Okay.
you know, what is that whole conversation about? And how
Yeah.
would that impact a situation like this? God forbid if this happens. Actually, listen, it's going to happen.
Yeah.
If it could
So
happen this time, it's going
that's a very good subject that you brought up. I think it's critically important that we do more community education on this because there are people who conflate defund the police and hearing that word with what the reality is, which is first of all, we have budget cuts across the city. We're defunding education, we're defunding sanitation, we're defunding healthcare, but nobody's calling it defunding those things. But it's been called defunding the police. What a lot of the activists and myself have been saying around this is, do we really believe that it's the job of a police officer to deal with people who have mental health issues? Or do we think it's time that we actually invested in real mental health professionals to deal with them? The job of the police officer is to protect and serve. There's a limited number of things that they are responsible to do. They are not the AMT. We have EMTs for that who should work in conjunctions with them. They are not mental health professionals, and there's a lot of things that they're being asked to do or that they're positioned to do that do not fall within the realm of what they do. There's also spending that's being spent. There's also stuff that's being spent on like military hardware, etc. The police force is supposed to deal with civilians in our city, right? So you equip them accordingly. Now, when you have an issue like what we saw today, if you do a cursory search for the images of who was standing on the Capitol steps to protect the Capitol when the Black Lives Matter protests were being held, when the women's rallies were being held, it wasn't DC police. There were uniformed armed forces there. We have a well-funded um, armed force. We have the National Guard, etc. Those are the people you call in when this type of stuff happens, and that should have been in place already given what was being said there. So we have to educate ourselves so that we don't cut off our noses to spite our spaces. Our community is being negatively impacted by police practices, and regardless of whether it's funded or defunded or not, we will address those things through reform. And if there's spending that needs to be reallocated, we will continue to do that. But this situation today was not a police situation. This was an armed forces situation because what you had was an armed insurrection and a coup d'etat attempt. You don't ask the DC police to stop a coup d'etat. You get in the National Guard and you get in the Army if you need to.
right. So actually, on that note of the National Guard, so I was trying to pay attention. I was trying to pay attention to the the different outlets again, BBC, CNN, uh, and I was looking for where's the National Guard. So am
Who's
I
in charge of
correct?
the Guard? The President of the United States. And the president is in charge of one branch of the armed forces, and you have governors, but DC doesn't have a governor, so
Mm,
the head clown is in charge. Excuse
I
me,
I didn't say
I didn't say that either.
that. But so that I was just very concerned about that part. Here it is. You have people climbing a wall. Like, did I see that? Did y'all see that? Did anybody see that?
Yeah,
People trying to climb to scale a wall. What they
listen.
do?
Let's be honest. Let's look at who the protesters are. Let's look at the look. It's generally white
I
men, white
I told you.
failed. Yeah, and
We
that's why they were
oh
allowed to
sorry.
tell those
We all
wrong.
know.
Yeah.
We wouldn't have made it. We wouldn't have made it 3 feet up.
We wouldn't have gotten even close to the Capitol building. You know, if you've been to enough DC protests, you know your skin color is a passport and it determines how far you get into these things.
Yep. So let's just woosah. Let's just take a breath. And if we could also, and this is very serious, of course, this entire conversation is serious. So if there's any, smile or smirk or what have you, honestly, we are being traumatized right now. We may be chuckling, and this is all the people. And if you share this out, not a problem,
Hmm.
which is what I want you to do. This is a moment that we're trying to figure out how, and I'm going to use a very touchy statement from last year on two fronts,
Hmm.
how we are going to take our next breath.
Would you repeat the question?
Sure, it's actually not a question. I'm actually just making a statement. We are trying to figure out how we are trying to take our next breath. So, pertaining to George Floyd, pertaining to the global shutdown, I can't even still say the word. We're just trying to figure out how to move forward. Like, how do we tell our young people? How do we tell our aunties and our grandmas and our grandpas and our fathers and who are our partners? How are we going to tell them? Yeah, go ahead. Let's wake up tomorrow. Let's go to work, go to school, go do your job. How are we going to tell them to go do that when there are
Well,
people around? Just
so
like,
that's
I can tell you what to do. I don't have any rules to follow. Nobody's going to stop me from doing what I want to do. How are we going to get to tomorrow? So that's, I think, what I want to wrap up this conversation with. How are we moving forward? What do we do next? Who do we call? Where do we sit? What do we do?
so the first thing is I started off by saying to you that I believe in not telling people fairy tales. I believe that we are a society, especially people of color, need to understand the realities of the power structure that we are in, what our role is, how we're able to move things, and how things that we have not been able to move. You don't get to choose between the red pill and the blue pill and then say, "Oh, I didn't like the pill that I chose, so now I want to go back to sleep." Or you're woke, or you're not.
Right.
This is a eye-opening, your woke moment. You don't get to go back to sleep after stuff like you don't, not even today, you don't get to go back to sleep after the last 4 years of seeing the things we've seen, the trauma that we've been through, both in terms of healthcare and COVID and in terms of the political and racial aspects of our society. You do not have the right to go back to sleep. End of story. Josh Pierre said it. We have a particular responsibility. There's a reason that you're called a citizen of a country. Citizen is a title with a responsibility. And as citizens of the United States, you have a responsibility to be aware of what's going on with your government. You have a responsibility to educate yourself and your children and your community about how government works, what the role of government is with regards to why you have affordable housing or do not have affordable housing, why it is with regards to the police. You are being brutalized, while in other communities, police have very good relationships with the police because the police are there to protect them and make them feel safe, whereas you don't necessarily feel safe. Why is it that your schools are crumbling and you don't have the best technology while other schools do? All of these things are things that you've been awakened to. Who's going to get the vaccine first? Who's going to die most of COVID? All of it. You don't get to go back to sleep. You're
Mhm.
awake now. We're staying awake. You stay mobilized. There will be no rest for the weary. That's just the way it is. So, if you are, as I am, willing to accept that, then your mind is open to then, well, now that I accept the reality of our situation as communities of color and as working class people, what is our next step? Do your research. Not everything you read on social media is real. Don't believe everything you hear. Use a healthy dose of skepticism, but do your research. When you see something, double check it, cross references it, etc. Get engaged in your local community. Get your family members engaged. Get them out there to vote every time there's an election. Because again, this election was too close for comfort.
Right.
And of course, stay safe. Do what you have to do. If you can't help yourself, you can't help your own sanity. You can't keep your own health in order. You're not able to be of any good to anybody's health or anybody else's sanity or their situation. So those are key things that I think we have to do. You're already awake. There's no going back to sleep from this. Take a deep breath. but understand that maintaining our civil rights, maintaining gaining economic prosperity for communities like ours is a perpetual struggle. If you think that somehow next year or the year after we pass one or two laws, it means that we're all good and we're set to go, then you really have not understood what has been done on the other side. Every time we make a law or we pass anything to take a step forward, they shove us back 2 and 3 steps. That's what happened. Obama got elected and it was groundbreaking in terms of the society that we lived in, and they shoved this country back to
Right.
the
And,
70,
right.
whatever,
The
50s.
other part though is that also people took, like, they sort of dialed back. Like, I'll just say the
Yes,
whoever
that's
you
us.
want to participate in the we were
Hmm.
like, oh,
We
we made
good now.
it. We're
Yeah.
good now.
Mm-mm.
We had. And then people was like, oh, you know, we can relax. No,
We
no,
did. We did it, y'all. No,
no.
it's every day.
Just because we made it, oh, this may sound weird, but just because some people thought this though, just because we made it to the big house, don't mean we sitting at the table.
Mm-mm.
We in the door.
Yes.
Doesn't mean we know the code to the alarms
Hmm.
on the door. They ain't tell
Exactly. They didn't even show us where the bathroom was.
oh,
We were barely in there.
we still
So,
got the
uh,
chamber pot.
but
Oh,
that's another story. I'm not gonna get on Barack because I love him to death. I just feel like there are certain things that could have been done for us.
right. But for this conversation for today, I want to say thank you 1,000 times. Thank you
Thank you
for
for having me.
being in real time. I mean, if I could have, and the only reason why we were on at 6 p.m. is because I couldn't get Brother Josue to come on at 5 when I was like,
My bad.
oh my gosh, like I gotta do something else. Like I have to talk about this. Who's gonna talk about this with me? Who's gonna help me process this? And if I have to go through the processing, now again, other people may be like, well, I understand what the real political machine is, but I'm sorry. Some of those people that are standing on those steps, they didn't take no.
Hmm.
They 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 didn't take no.
Hmm.
They said we're going to try to push the envelope. So I just wanted a moment, not necessarily to get into their head, because we can't get into their head. We're not them. But for us on the other side, to try to have a moment of what's really going on here? Is this really real? How am I going to move forward? What am I going to think about the people who live in that area who are still surrounded by all of these folks who are still on the Capitol steps?
Hmm.
Does that curfew just pertain to them or to me? Because I could be home just trying to go, and get some quote unquote, milk for my young children, and I get caught up in it. No, 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 no. I'm not them. But I know it's a curfew, but I'm not them. Because of course the curfew is going to apply to some people, but
Yes.
not others. Because I really, once I get off of here, I'm going to be looking at CNN and BBC to find out, are they still on the steps? And if
Hmm.
the 6 p.m. curfew is real, how come they're still on the steps?
Yeah. So we're gonna find out. Yeah, we're gonna see if we saw how a lot of again protesters here in Brooklyn were treated when there was a curfew, and after 8 p.m. or whatever the time frame was, we started to see heads being busted. Right. So let's see some heads being busted. It's not because I'm pro violence; it's I'm pro equality, and what's good for the gander is good for the goose.
And so remember, when we had the curfew, you, Brother Josue, you caught me out there.
Oh yes,
'Cause
I did catch you out there. I was out there too a couple of times. So you know, we
I was
maybe we
walking from
both.
my mother's house to my house. I
Yeah.
was like, I have proof. I've just left my mother's house. But
Mhm.
I went live, and you were like, Daryl, what are you doing out there? And I
Mhm.
showed you the street. There was nobody on the avenue that you and I were talking about,
Yeah. Mhm.
and it was only like 8:30, 9 o'clock. No, from, let's say, Brooklyn College, I could see all the way down to like Beverly Road. No one.
Because the vast majority of people in our communities, especially here in Flatbush, contrary to what's portrayed in the media, are law-abiding citizens. Yes, there are a couple of people who will do violent things, but the prevalence
But
of
even
that
they
type
weren't out.
of fear
That's what I'm
is
saying.
in every society.
Because I was looking, I said, okay, I know people, over here are always on the stoop. We call it a stoop,
Mhm.
or what. I didn't even see them out. I said, okay. All right. All right. So, anyway, I just want to say once again, we have been chatting with Brother Josue Pierre, district leader for the 42nd Assembly District in the village of Flatbush. I have to say it
Flatbush.
like that. Flatbush, San Francisco.
I want to, and yes,
Yeah,
and shout out to everybody because I did see a lot of your viewers are on Facebook right now. I hope to respond to some of the comments that they said. If I know we're limited on time, so I'll just go through and I'll respond to some of the ones I can.
sure.
Um,
That's fine.
through the comment section. But thank you again for having me. I really appreciate it. Hopefully, we'll get to do this again at some point. I'm also a candidate for New York City Council here in the 40th Council District to represent Flatbush, Ditmas Park, Kensington, Midwood, Prospect Lefferts Gardens, and parts of South Crown Heights. If you'd like to know more about me, you can visit my website, which is pierre2021.com, and I'll post the link to it as well in the chat portion of your Facebook Live.
Sure.
Thank you.
And matter of fact, and I'll go back in and I'll put up the link as well.
Thank you.
So, once again, this is a Learn to Grow You moment where I plant seeds to help you grow.
Thank
I
you.
want people to be influenced, to be impacted, and to inspire other people to live a better life than we did the day before. And yesterday, we were happy.
Hmm.
Most of us were happy. We flipped the red
Hmm.
to the blue. Today, we are surprised and astonished. But as the democratic society that we are in, we do recognize that this is part of the process. As I have to show up for my constituents and those people who I know, you know who I'm talking about,
Hmm.
I have to inspire these people to keep going, to trust the process, to learn as much as they can,
Hmm.
and don't put all of your eggs in one basket.
Hmm.
And vote for who is going to represent you, not just represent an idea, but represent your interests. So, thank you so much for those people who have stayed. I really appreciate it. Let's move into 2021 on a better foot. Let us show up on inauguration.
Excellent. Thank you for having me.
Have a good night.
Have a good night.